So Pete Buttigieg, our military intelligence officer connected to the CIA, who is running with very low polls, has decided that democracy, it's not that big a deal. So South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg appears to be betting on a contested convention next summer and is already reaching out to superdelegates months before the first primary ballots are cast. Where does that sound familiar from? Anyway, he is ramping up outreach with superdelegates and phone calls in an attempt to win their support for his campaign, even though the first primaries and caucuses don't take place until February 2020. So he's already hedging his bets up as he sees he can't win democratically, saying a majority of the 240 people employed by the campaign are women, that 37% are people of color, and 28% are LGBTQ, which means he deserves and is owed the presidency. Buttigieg has slowly, and remember, this is the same guy who has taken more money from number of billionaires than anyone else. Buttigieg has slowly been trending downward in the polls according to Real Clear Politics. He's finding a plan B. According to the aggregator, it was at 7.8% in the first round of debates. Now, since late June, it's at 6%, so he's lost 1.8% in aggregate. In 2015, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton relied heavily on superdelegate support months before the first primaries to widen her delegate lead over her rival, Bernie Sanders. I'm sure a guy that none of us have heard of, or a situation none of us have heard of. Bloomberg reported at the time that Clinton's lead was insurmountable. As we know, as President Clinton still lives and breathes in the White House, it was clearly and correctly insurmountable, and all the news media got it right before the primaries had even begun. After a push from progressive activists within the party, the Democratic National Committee changed the convention rules where the superdelegates' votes wouldn't be counted on the first ballot at the party's official convention of July 2020. Superdelegates are typically made of high-profile democratic elected officials like U.S. senators, members of Congress, governors, along with state-level Democratic Party bosses, of course, like Madigan, exactly, make up roughly a third of the delegates needed to clinch their nomination, and are by design meant to put a finger, I don't know, like an elephant finger or something
like that, something,
or an elbow, maybe the elbow of putting your elbow on the scale, or your entire body weight even, or a third of your body weight, I guess technically. Are meant to put a finger on the scale in favor of candidates more favorable to the Democratic establishment, according to former DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who clearly isn't guilty of election fraud with Tim Canova, I promise. Stop in a New York Times report, something reported earlier this year called "Stop Sanders Democrats Are Agonizing Over His Momentum." This is something we covered a while back when this came out. Superdelegates against the idea of Bernie Sanders being the Democratic nominee because he'll cut their power away, discussed considering using their second ballot vote to deny him the nomination. And guess who was at that meeting? Well, Pete Buttigieg was in attendance, along with, it was at least one of several secretive backroom meetings, along with Nancy Pelosi, who again loves ICE and loves all the things that it doesn't think it needs to go away. Chuck Schumer, Chucky Boy, whose glasses are always falling directly off his face, and of course, without saying, several wealthy Democratic donors, I'm sure many of which who have happen to be the same people donating to Buttigieg. And I want to read this last quote, which goes from Tim Kaine, who is to the right of Hillary Clinton, wrote, "I have long believed that there should be no superdelegates. These positions are given undue influence in the popular nominating contest and make the process less democratic." This was written to Tom Perez. I want to go to a quote that I forget who said it, but it might have been Jimmy Dore, but I might not be quoting the right person. And that is, Republicans rig elections, Democrats rig primaries. But as we've said before, on some level it doesn't matter. If you have a big enough force, bigger army diplomacy still rules. Sanders right now has over 1 million supporters that are volunteering.
And probably going to go past 1 million.
It's already past 1 million, but the last big number was at 1 million, which is more than, he has the record of the most donors Buttigieg has gotten his maxed out checks. Most of these people can't give again. So if you look at the amount of money they give them, try and get it so you can see it right. It's like this, and then it will just drop down because then they have to start working on their small donor dollars, and they just don't have that much. Warren's doing okay with that. There's that list that the New York Times, might have been the New York Times, put out where they showed a list of where all the people across the country are donating to the most. Sanders took over the entire country with the exception of Delaware, Texas, and Minnesota and Indiana. He completely took over so bad that they had to remove him in a second one just to show you where everyone else was getting their money. The Democrats, we know from the start that they're going to pull shenanigans. But again, remember, this is immensely important to remember, and never forget this. The Democratic Party, the DNC, will never, ever, ever have the ability that they did in 2016. There will never be that perfect amount of circumstances again where you have the superdelegates all voting for Hillary Clinton. You have Hillary Clinton, which controlled the party. You have Hillary Clinton taking over the party, putting her Debbie Wasserman Schultz in charge of the party. You had all the media supporting her, all the donors supporting her. You will never have that mix again with someone so weak. Or I shouldn't say weak, but unknown. Sanders came out of nowhere, and with the most rigged system the Democrats could possibly imagine.
With the media supporting.
The media support, the business support, with the everything. The Democratic Party put their entire body on the scale. The news articles, everything that happened in 2016. She just barely won the primary against some unknown socialist from Vermont, and only won by 10 points. They will never have the ability, and especially since these reformations, which again, still have these people on there, they will never have that support again. And this time, Sanders has the power, Sanders has the people, Sanders has the money. Sanders isn't going to run out. Like 3% of the people that donated to Sanders have maxed out, whereas most of the people, are a much larger proportion that are voting for any of these other people, maybe with the exception of Warren, have. So they will try, but they are weakened from the last cycle. They don't have the money that they had before. They don't have the connections they had before. They're fighting over multiple people. They're still picking and choosing, and Sanders can't be ignored.
Well, there's just a couple of things I want to take away. Granted, Pete Buttigieg is trying to court and get those 6 Democratic superdelegates, and the only strategy I see him trying to pull out from this is that he's going to make himself a power player for whoever the neoliberal whoever the Democrats want to carry their banner. And whether it's Biden or Kamala Harris, because I think those are the two that are going to be who the Democrats have to choose.
I said at the very beginning of this election, I think it's going to come down to Kamala and Bernie. I think that still is true.
Right. But between the establishment candidates that the Democrats want, Buttigieg is going to throw his support behind said establishment candidate, because that's the only move I see him trying to do, because he wants to have some kind of future job in the next presidential administration, because let's face it, his job as mayor of South Bend is going downhill. In fact, Kim Harden has made a lot of interesting quotes about Pete Buttigieg, especially the very fact that he has very low support amongst African-American voters, and he's done for as a candidate. But it also goes to show you that there's still some remnants of the DNC still playing their little tricks in regards to denying somebody like Sanders the nomination. And let's not forget, this is a little depressing note before I hand it over to Paul. Donald Trump was more democratically elected in his primary than Hillary Clinton was.
Well, that's a repeated thing. A Republican primary process is far more democratic than the Democratic Party's primary process.
Yeah, I know.
It's very superdelegates in and of themselves are an inherently undemocratic thing.
It says a lot, and it's completely depressing when you really look at it.
So here's another thing that this reminded me of is Forbes was reporting recently that Pete Buttigieg has the most billionaire supporters of all of the candidates in the Democratic primary. I think the number was 12 billionaire supporters. So
it was 23.
Yeah.
Is it that high?
It might be. I know he's number one.
He is number one, followed shortly by people like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. And those are the type of sort of mealy-mouthed, milquetoast, centrist, moderate, we're not going to do anything but kick the can down the road type Democrats that billionaires like to get behind, that superdelegates like to get behind. Look how progressive we are. He's a gay guy. Look how progressive we are. She's a minority woman. Look, making all the difference in the world. Good thing they won't affect my bottom line at all. There's not going to be new taxes. We're going to keep my lobbying in place. Let's not have that Medicare for
Have
all
everyone
thing.
at brunch.
Yeah, exactly. Let's
Have everyone
get
at
somebody
brunch.
to put everyone to sleep and be like, look how modern and progressive and inclusive we are. He's gay, and we're gonna vote for him. Like,
I want to.
that's the weakest. That's the most weak sauce political position that you could possibly take, and it's infuriating that it's being put forward as honest, thoughtful engagement with our political structure.
And for those of you, we keep saying the brunch thing. That comes from a meme that happened right after Trump got elected. That me and Kit, it's kind of just stuck with us. I think you Paul too. Don't want to leave Paul out on that. Where it was one of the protests happening directly after Trump got elected, and it was this person that had a sign that said, if Hillary was elected, I would still be at brunch.
We would be at brunch.
We would be at brunch
right now.
And that's the entire issue. That's the entire issue on the Democratic Party. That everyone that says vote blue no matter who misses the entire point of how we got Trump in the first place. Trump happened. Obvious inputs lead to obvious outputs. When people are suffering and struggling and no one cares about them, history has shown time and time again, every time, they will eventually go for a demagogue. That's all Trump was. That's all he is. That's all he represents, is something, because what they're going through is so terrible, they'll take anyone else. And if that's why you can't go to brunch, because you like the candidate. Even the candidates you like, you have to make sure you apply the pressure, because if you don't, someone else will.
Also, a note from Kira Elliott, who is in the live stream chat. Shout out to Kira. Also, he can speak 7 languages. Didn't you hear about Pete Buttigieg?
I only heard one. I only heard him speak English.
Well, whatever. That doesn't count. He's going to win votes or nothing. So, let's move on.
God, he speaks 7 languages? I'm voting for him now.
That means he must have great policies. Wait, how are those?
How does that relate to anything? Nothing at all.
He reads books that are Norwegian. Oh, I'm going to vote for him now. That's not my imperialist.
Nobody cares about
I keep pointing out that his dad was a Marxist economist professor, and how far did the apple fall from that tree?
Don't forget, he wrote a very positive article way back in 2000 about Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, it's like all of these guys...
And then he compared Sanders supporters to Trump supporters.
They know better, but when they realize, if I want to gain favor and gain power, I've got to cozy up to billionaires, I've got to cozy up to superdelegates, I need to drop all of my convictions and make sure that I don't do anything so that I can get the power I want. That's what's going on.